In season 1, as usual, Max Verstappen won. This was about as dominant as you could get, as he was over 130 points ahead of Hamilton in second. With Red Bull winning the Constructors, second place was pretty closely contested between Mercedes and Ferrari. Alpine and McLaren were also very close, but just behind them was Porsche with 49 points, all scored by this video's driver Nico Rosberg. You know, that Monaco-based YouTuber who did a bit of racing on the side. With Nico scoring all the points, his teammates, as you'll see in a second, scored 0. Onto the driver transfers, and in season 1, a lot happened immediately. Doohan started off as the Porsche rookie, but he was binned off at mid-season, and the reserve driver Barnes joined. Around the grid though, Bottas moved to McLaren as Sainz went to Alfa Romeo. Russell joined Ferrari, and Norris joined Mercedes, where he would pick up his first win in F1 in the final race of the season. And at post-season, Zhou replaced Barnes at Porsche, PORSCHE finally got in the Sauber, and Hülkenberg retired to let Albon join Haas. Lawson went to Williams, and Fernando Alonso retired. But he did a 180 because he actually didn't retire and raced in season 2. But for season 2, there are chassis and durability regulation changes, and the graph is looking pretty standard with everyone in the same order as how we started. Season 2 now, and Max won again, but this time with a much closer title fight with Mercedes. Lando and Lewis both challenged Max and failed, as he got his 4th title in F1. Despite Checo finishing in 4th, Red Bull still clinched another Constructors' Trophy by 15 points, as Ferrari were nowhere near anyone. Alpine and Aston Martin were close, but after that, Haas scored 18 points. Porsche haven't fully fallen off, but they were 8th with 7 points, once again all scored by Rosberg, who finished 14th in the championship. But driver transfers now, and Fernando actually did it this time and called it quits, which let Magnussen join Aston Martin and Doohan join Haas. And it's a quiet post-season because Zhou moved to Aston Martin and Magnussen went to Porsche. No reg changes for the next season, and it's looking close to the top as Aston, Red Bull and Alpine are very close, and Haas are the 5th best car, being level with Ferrari. Season 3 had a shock winner as Max won again, and this time he was 40 points clear of Hamilton in second. Haas's good car didn't translate as they finished with 2 points in 9th, but Alpine did do well as they came 4th and nearly beat Ferrari. Once again, Porsche had a 1-digit points total with 6 points, and they were split evenly between the drivers as Rosberg and Magnussen scored 3 each. On to driver moves, and there was only one move as Hamilton retired and Drugovich replaced him at Mercedes. There were massive regulation changes as aero, powertrain and durability were affected. And finally, looking at the graph, Red Bull are very clear and it seems the grid has turned back to normal. A pretty quick season this, so let's get into season 4. And it was Max again on top as he was 70 points clear of Lando in second. Once again, the Alpine drivers scored well, and also Aston Martin had a very equal lineup in Zhou and Stroll, who scored 35 and 33 points. Overall, Drugovich wasn't too bad in his first season, but he was quite far off his teammates, so unless his performance gets better, Max will probably continue this dominance. Shockingly though, Alfa Romeo have jumped Aston and McLaren in 5th, largely because of Sainz, who scored 80 out of their 90 points. And Porsche were down in 9th, having only scored 14 points, all of those coming from Rosberg. There were 3 driver moves, and Drugovich went to Alpine to replace Ocon, who went to Porsche, and Magnussen went to Mercedes to fill in for Drugovich. Apart from the Alfa Romeo shock, there haven't really been any changes since these new reg changes came in, but near the end of the season, Alpine massively jumped up the order, so who knows what they're cooking. Well, Max won again, and it was close, but Lando wasn't close enough. Mercedes were 20 points off, and down the grid it stayed relatively the same, apart from Alfa falling off from their 5th to 8th behind Porsche. Talking about them, they scored 3 points, with 2 coming from Ocon and the other from Rosberg. Onto driver transfers, and it was another quiet one as Sainz was tired of carrying Alfa so much and retired. This meant Hauger went to Alfa Romeo, and Bottas also retired, leading to Deruvolo replacing him at McLaren. McLaren looked pretty close to the top runners and could challenge them very soon, but once again, there's a few different sections with 6 teams near enough to the top, 2 teams bang in the middle, and 3 backmarker teams forming. With no reg changes, so we move into season 6. It's taken 6 seasons, but finally we have a new winner. Lando has finally beaten Max and also helped in Mercedes winning the Constructors for the first time in the save as well. But the biggest surprise is Ocon in 3rd. He was level on points with Magnussen with 182 in his Porsche, as he, along with 99 from Rosberg, managed to get them 3rd in the championship. He also got the team's first win of the save in Miami. Going down the grid, Aston Martin have fallen off and are now 7th, but now we finally have a new champion. The driver market has erupted. First, there was a Hauger and Deruvolo swap at mid-season, but at post-season, after finally losing a championship battle, Max just f***ed off and Perez followed him, allowing for 2 seats at Red Bull to open up. Gasly rejoined the team alongside Norris. Piastri replaced Gasly at Alpine to rejoin that team, and Vesti went to Mercedes. Tsunoda joined McLaren to replace Piastri, and Zhou went to AlphaTauri. Vips then went to Aston Martin, and Ocon and Leclerc did a seat swap. And finally, Deruvla and Hauger reversed their seat swap and rejoined Alfa Romeo and McLaren. So that was crazy, but to add more fuel to the fire, there were aero, chassis and durability regulation changes. And finally, the teams have started to flatline, but I suspect they're going to fall off come the start of next season. But Porsche look level with Red Bull, as it's hard to really separate anyone. So with Max out of the sport, expect a lot more of the chaos of Season 6 to follow in the next 4 seasons. And in Season 7, Porsche have their first championship, and Leclerc now has his first in F1. It was a dominant one for him, as he finished nearly 100 points ahead of second place Gasly, who actually outperformed Lando. Leclerc won on debut in Bahrain and couldn't be stopped, as he even won in Monaco. Elsewhere, Vesti got his first win in Saudi Arabia, Gasly got his second win at Australia from 11th on the grid, and Albon managed his first win in a Mercedes 1-2 at Hungary. Mercedes managed to jump Red Bull, as without Verstappen they've crumbled, and going down the grid, Alfa have returned to 5th spot, while Aston Martin have fallen to 8th. But now on to driver moves, and as you've seen, Vesti was 4th in the championship, but of course Albon and Magnussen were racing for Mercedes in the last screenshot, so what the f***'s happened? Well, Mercedes dropped Vesti down to Williams at mid-season as Albon replaced him and Lawson moved to Haas. Absolutely criminal from them, as he had 4 wins in the first half of the season. But otherwise in the transfer market, it was quiet, as Vips was dropped for Vesti at Aston Martin and Iwasa replaced him at Williams. There were no regulation changes for Season 8, and the performance graph has pretty much flatlined for everyone, so we're not going to mention them anymore. So on to Season 8. Season 8 now, and we have a repeat winner, as Leclerc got his second title in similar style to his first. Just on the brink of 300 points, but this time very closely fought with Norris. Due to Rosberg being mid, Red Bull reclaimed the Constructors' title, but what else could you expect from a YouTuber? I call him mid, but he did manage his first win of the save in a dominant 1-2 at Singapore. And Aston Martin have recovered to 5th, but it's a disservice to call them Aston Martin, as all 104 of their points were scored by Vesti, who's clearly very pissed off, understandably, from the Mercedes sack. And Alfa Romeo have stayed up there in the standings, as they finished 6th with 88 points. On to driver transfers, and Lawson was dropped at mid-season for Iwasa at Haas, and Vips went to Williams. At post-season, Gasly retired, and Leclerc thought this was the perfect chance to drive for that team, as he jumped ship to Red Bull. Russell replaced him at the Porsche team, as Novalak went to Ferrari. And finally, for Season 9, there are aero, chassis and powertrain regulation changes. Well, I bet Leclerc's feeling a bit stupid now. Russell won the title by 96 points to best mate Albon and claimed his first title. One thing I do want to mention is Vesti getting 3rd in the championship in an Aston Martin that finished 5th in the Constructors. Fair to say teammate Stroll isn't delivering. He didn't deliver so much that they replaced him with Lawson at mid-season after he had scored 0 points, but that's still coming up. Rosberg actually managed to finish in 4th in the championship, but granted Red Bull were now the 3rd best car, and Ferrari and half of Mercedes were completely out of it. Porsche are now starting to dominate the sport, and to be honest, I'm here for it. Alpine have really fallen off though, as Alfa have kept up their good scoring as they finished 6th again. Okay, now on to the driver moves, and obviously I've already mentioned Stroll's sack, but elsewhere, Novalak was sacked for Piastri, Tsunoda went to Alpine, and Stroll replaced Yuki at McLaren. At postseason, De Vries was dropped by AlphaTauri, incredible that he even got to this point, and was replaced by Fittipaldi. Drogovic was dropped and Kalen Williams replaced him at Alpine, and Norris for some reason moved to Alfa Romeo as Russell gave up on the Porsche project for Red Bull. Finally, PORSCHE moved to Porsche from Alfa Romeo. And there's no regulation changes, so let's get into the final season of the save. And my, what a season it was, as Porsche once again won both championships, and PORSCHE absolutely destroyed the field in his first season in a good car, as he beat Leclerc by 106 points. Rosberg managed to finish 5th despite only winning 1 race, which was a 1-2 in the final one at Abu Dhabi. Lando did well in his Alfa Romeo, as he helped them finish 5th ahead of Aston Martin, and further down the grid Alpine scored 2 points. So Porsche have done fairly well for themselves in the sport, and will only have to dream of what they could have been in F1. But if you enjoyed this one, make sure to like, subscribe and become a member if you want to, so I can read out your amazing names here and at the start of every video. And thank you very much for watching.